Today we are bringing the curtains down on our Resilient Families in a Complex World series, and we are ending on the matter of family spirituality. We're going to take it within the context of family intimacy, because there is a link, there's a correlation between family worship, spirituality, and intimacy. Intimacy is engendered, intimacy is engendered when the family engage in spiritual activities together, especially in the home setting. And I will show you three 3 to 4 slides. Then we'll take a few questions. We're going to be short. Today it's the Sabbath and you need to go to rest. But I will say to you that, oh, by the way, Coy and Loy, very nice singing, happy to meet you. And you said you were the family life leaders of your church. Kudos to you. And I'll be praying for you that you do such a great work that is needed in our churches. There are 8 stages of family development. One is the premarital stage. Then it is the marital dyad, where you have just got married. And then there's the marital triad, when you would have invited a baby into the family. And then there is the complete family, where you are no longer having babies. You are done, you are tied off. And then it's the next stage is the family living with adolescent children. And then after the stage, it is the launching stage, where the first child leaves the home, perhaps for university or for work. And then the final stage, it is the post-launching or launching stage, where your last child has left the home, and it's only you, your wife, your spouse, and yourself. You're in the big home, the big house, and you only have each other. And each couple you may be going, that's where you are headed. But in each of these stages, family spirituality is very vital in maintaining family cohesion and also engendering a strong level of intimacy. So we will have some questions. I am going to just share briefly with you something here. Yes, so family spirituality. This, what you see here, has major impacts on the family. And I will share, and many of us, we see worship as just a mundane task of just taking the Bible and singing songs and so on. But it has some great benefits to it. And if we understand it, and if we really become more intentional with it, then you are going to harness all the benefits. So I'm going to show something with you. So marriages tend to end at 1 or 2 times, 5 to 7 years and 10 to 12 years. So many marriages that break up, and this is a survey done in the United States. The results may be different for the British Isles. The divorce occurred between 5 to 7 years and between 10 to 12 years. And what was realized is that marital infidelity was not the major cause of these breakups. Domestic violence was not the major cause of these breakups. Abuse was not the major cause of these breakups. But the breakups occur when people turned away from each other. So in a family setting, there needs to be positive interactions, and the more positive interactions that you have, it is the better the family. Now, this is according to the Gottman Institute. So what happens is that divorce occurs when you begin to have too many negative interactions with each other. And then the more negative interactions that you have with each other, your brain registers it as high conflict, and especially when you turn away from a spouse, the brain registers it as a neglect, or it's a quote unquote a diss. And the more you engage in negative interactions with each other, it is the more your relationship is on a decline. For every 20 successful couples who have great relationships, they have more positive interactions and fewer negative interactions. In fact, there's a survey, 20 to 1, those couples with highest number or greatest level of marital satisfaction they had and family satisfaction, for every 20 positive interactions they only had 1 negative interaction. And now you may be saying, what does that have to do with family worship? Well, within family worship, more bids are done. If family worship is done well with the family, you have something that is created called a bid. A bid is it bids for affection. It is a bid really is a request for intimacy from a child, from a parent, from a spouse. So what happens is that during family worship, there are bids being made, a point of contact, a closeness. And whenever we respond to bids, what happens is that our bonds of love become closer. And for children, for example, when they tell you, mommy, and they sit on your lap and they just all over you and you say, and they are making a bid. It's a point of emotional connect. When your husband calls you and say, what are you wearing today? What are you cooking today? He's making really a bid. Your wife would ask, how far are you from home? She's making a bid, a point for connect. Children do it, and parents do it. Your spouse does it as well. Whenever we respond to that bid, our relationship becomes stronger. When we don't respond to it or become abrasive to it, what happens is that our brain registers it as lack of love. So this is very, very, very careful, very, now there is something called positive statement override. For example, when somebody makes a negative statement, you override it with a positive statement. So for example, I'm going to stop sharing screen here. So for example, in family worship, when the family is gathered together and songs are being sung and a text is being read and there's discussion about the text, there is interaction. What happens is that bids are being made and bids are being responded to. And just because of family worship, there is opportunity for the family to draw closer together, very much closer together. Now, I want to say here, the Adventist home is characterized by worship. Now, that's what differentiates many homes from the Adventist home. In the Adventist home, worship is paramount. But we are in a state where we are no longer having the style of Adventist home we used to have before. Back in the days where your parents would wake you up at 4 o'clock, although I think this was a little harsh, 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and worship and week of prayer, especially for those of you who from Jamaica, who are from Jamaica. And you realize that in family worship, there was a sense of closeness. You got to hear daddy explain texts and mommy sing songs. And I can tell you, many of the memories in some Adventist home is around family worship. And especially when it is not done in a legalistic way, especially when it is done in, Ellen White said it must be done in a way that is very uplifting, that is interesting for the children, and also in a way that there is variety and there is consistency. And when these things occur, brothers and sisters, what you have happening is family intimacy is being improved and you're getting closer and closer together. I remember when we were newlywed in Jamaica, we were not more than 1 year in the relationship. We read the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel together. And I was in school then. And it was like a movie. You heard David and Saul and it's every chapter it's picking up pace and something is happening. David is hiding from Saul. And I tell you, I used to leave school very early just so we can go to read a chapter. And it was so, I always remember these moments because those were the formative years or the formative moments in the relationship. And it was characterized by the study of the word and worship. So it is of critical importance, not only to fulfill a biblical requirement as a family, but it has other benefits. As I said, during worship, it is proven that more bids are made. Point for intimacy are made when worship is rich, and the response to bids are more frequent during family worship. And we must never lose sight of it. We must never lose sight of it, that family worship has great benefits. And especially when the wife prays for the mother, for his wife, for her husband, and the husband pray for his wife. Lord, help my husband today as he goes to work. He has this challenge at work. Or, dear Lord, help my wife today as she goes out to teach. The children can be very rude. And the wife hears the husband praying for her, and the husband hears the wife praying for him, and the children hear the parents praying for them. It says that I am concerned about you, and it also lays the platform for family improvement. Are you together? Are you together? So very much important. There are some questions which were sent to Elder Francis, and so we're going to have these questions now. We're going to have a feedback, answer, and question session.
Okay. Question number 1. Many times as the woman, I have to call the family to worship. My husband stays in bed a little longer than usual. I thought he's supposed to be the priest of the family.
Thank you for that question. Now, this is one of the problems that the Adventist home is facing. And I'm speaking not by observation and not by empirical data, so I could be wrong. But we see here that there is a challenge with men in our church these days. I am experiencing it. And you find where the women are more progressive as it relates to spirituality. And you find where that most Adventists, a lot of the homes that I have seen, they are really spiritually managed by the woman. And it's frustrating for her. And she knows that the man should play a leading role where that is concerned. And so the question is, the man is sleeping, oversleeping. He might be very tired. He might not even be interested. He has so much going on his head. But when the woman is the one who is constantly calling the worship session to order, having an interest in it, it is a microcosm of a bigger problem. It is a microcosm of a man who is not really performing his manly and Christian duties in other areas of the relationship. And what must she do? She must talk to her husband in a way that is non-critical and non-judgmental. There, I feel satisfied. I love it when you take charge of worship. I feel very secured when you lead out in that aspect. And the fact that I'm leading out in that aspect, I'm being robbed of the opportunity to feel that way as a wife. I want my husband to be the leading figure of spirituality, spiritually in our home, to set the spiritual tone, because he needs to set the spiritual tone, and that's his God-given responsibility. Now, constantly when she does that, and the way, and he stays away, what is happening? He is not responding to the bids, and they are drawing away from each other. Just by that, they are drawing away from each other, especially within the Adventist home. The problem, as I said before, is that I am seeing that as a very common practice now. Either there is no worship, or the wife tries to put it together and sometimes she's sleeping, she has no help, and she's crying out. But wife, if there's a wife like that, you can tell your husband how grateful you are when he does it, and how beneficial it is to you and to your view of him when he does that. You see him more as the man of the home.
Yes. Before I move on to the second question, I am seeing something in the chat. Let me just check to see if it is a question. Okay, no. Feel free. Okay, there's a question here, a raised hand. Sister Francis, you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My question to the response that you just gave, Pastor. Over a period of time, it will become very frustrating for the woman to be saying, honey, I like how you carry out worship, and I want to see you doing that. To be honest, I'm talking for myself. In terms of trying to boost your husband up in getting them to do worship, it just seems more work for the woman. She's trying to make sure that her family is covered, and yet still she has to then boost up the man to do what he is required to do. So over a period of time, I think it would be very daunting on the woman, frustrating, because she would now be taking double roles. She'd be trying to be a mother to her husband and a mother to her children as well. So over a period of time, that could be frustrating for her.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
So I'm just wondering how would you go about in another way to encourage the woman, or to get the man to do what would have been required of him?
In my response, this is the initial confrontation or the initial challenge. If one thing doesn't work, you don't use it over and over again, and it doesn't work. So when I said to use the approach of encouragement through that means, it is the initial point of contact, the initial point where we are resolving the conflict, and not that she's doing it over and over again and not getting results. Now, there is a reason why he's like that. And many of our behavioral problems stem from reasons, deep-seated reasons. And one of the models I know that worked in a particular church and is that within the men's ministries department, there was a strong men's ministries department in that church. And that is your family worship was approached for the men. And it was not the women who were encouraging the men this time, but it was the men in there by the men's ministries leader facilitating, encouraging the men. And the sheer benefits would have been contributed or communicated to the other men who were weak in that area and not doing it and so on. The encouragement from the men, it worked better from the encouragement from the wives. And that is just one model that I can quote here. A strong men's ministry that emphasizes the spirituality of men, especially in the homes. For that church, it worked better when the men encouraged the men to have worship and to really detail the benefits that it has been to their lives and their children. And it really worked success when the men did that. And perhaps it's an encouragement to us here, the men who are here, to the men's ministries leader, to support, find out how is family worship? Our men, do a survey and approach that in a very empowering way, in a way that is non-judgmental and non-critical, but to encourage the men. And I can guarantee you, if the men do it, from the men's ministry's perspective, have that as a goal. We want to increase men leading out in worship in our Adventist homes. Then I believe you can get even greater success. But then again, I'm quoting to you a model that has worked.
Thank you.
Before I move on to the third question, just to add to that as well, Pastor, I believe as well, the homes that some of these men come from, it can also boil down to the fact that within those homes, there wasn't a father figure that would have set an example whereby they saw their fathers leading out and bringing the family together. I have listened to various pastors around the world. One specific one, Mark Finley, and he would mention while he was growing up the part that his father played, that benefited him, that assisted him in becoming who he is now, and to lead his family and what have you. And I think that's one of the major challenges that some of the men have. And that model that you made mention, if the men could see or hear from other men their experiences, and to see how they would have led out their family in worship, how they gathered their families and united their families, it would be of great benefit to some of the younger men.
Excellent. And in Titus chapter 2 and verse 1 through 10, Paul is giving the characteristic of a sound church. And in those characteristics, or he said, the older men and the older women are teaching the younger men and younger. You are so right, Elder Francis. But if they have not, and many of our ladies, they would have gotten married to men who would perhaps not have a spiritual foundation growing up. So they are married to them. The woman has a spiritual foundation. She's married to him. She's expecting that. But this was not something that he really achieved in his family of origin. So of course it is going to be a problem. I have heard one woman, a pastor's daughter, and of course she went to university and she met a spouse at university, and he became an Adventist. And 12 years later, she said to me, Pastor Joel, I just have this problem. He just wake up and just what he did at yard, or that's how, and it's a struggle too, because she was raised in a home where daddy was, and so when the men, strong men's ministries, and I know Croydon has a strong men's ministry, commendations to you, and we have to facilitate these discussions right there. It's a spiritual responsibility of men that they must live up to.
Yes. Next question. I am a single mother with lots to do before and after work. Most times worship gets neglected, and this person is seeking some assistance where that is concerned, some advice.
As a single mother, and you are really the head of your home. You don't have a man. And single parenting is a little more demanding than parenting within a nuclear family. That single mother can become very, very much versatile. So for example, traditionally we believe that you must do it in the morning and you must do it in the evening. For me, it's once it's done. And nothing says that it must be done in the morning and it must be done in the evening. By tradition, we have had the morning and evening sacrifice, and there's a biblical tradition coming in, but it's not a commandment. And we cannot be legalistic with it. So my advice to the single mother is that ensure that it's done. A part of the day, for example, it may not be possible in the morning for you, and there are some families that do it in the evening as opposed to the morning. And there are some who do it in the morning as opposed to the evening. But once it is done, get innovative. If you make things a priority, then you're going to make time for it. Whatever you make a priority, you're going to make time for it. And I will tell you, single mother, if you are here, that is what your children are going to remember. A large part of their life is going to be when they're doing your eulogy, they're going to say, Mommy was a single, but she always ensured that we had. And I am so thankful that she raised us up like that. Although she was busy, although she had so many things to do, she didn't have a husband to assist her, but she ensured. Now, that is priority. When we make things priority in our lives, we then make time for it. Don't you realize sometimes we are very busy, but some things we see as priority, we spend so much time on it. We need to prioritize it. Our philosophy of it must change. It is priority, and make it a priority. And I will tell you, it's us. This is our culture. This is our culture. We are very much greedy towards God. We want many things from God, but we don't want God. And it's a culture that has become very greedy and very busy. The three devastating enemies of the Christians is one, noise. Our environment is too noisy. We cannot hear the voice of God. Two, crowds. We are in crowds because they clogged our ears, because everybody has a perspective. And three, as Carl Jung says, hurry or busy. He said, hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil. Busy, being under Satan's yoke. And so these three things, in the environments that we live in, the societies that we live in, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of crowd, and there's a lot of busyness. And Martin Luther said, I have so many things to do in one day. If I don't but spend 4 hours in prayer, I cannot accomplish them. We say the opposite. We say, I have so many things to do, I cannot pray. But when we look at the reformers, the men in the Middle Ages, Zwingli, Jerome, Huss, Martin Luther, let us look at George Washington Carver. Let us look at many of the inventors of the 19th century. They were men of great prayer. Many of the inventions that we have today, they came about by prayer, men who prayed. Look at George Washington Carver, a Black scientist. We all celebrate him. But these men made prayer and worship priority. Priority. So we must, and I guarantee you, if you do that, you're going to realize that you accomplish more in your day. If you make it a priority, you're going to realize that you would have accomplished more in your day. But Elder Francis, there's a model I have for spending 4 hours in prayer per day. There's a model that I have, and I normally share, and I'm hoping to be able to share it with you.
Yes, Pastor, that would be really helpful. Thank you for that. That answer to that question I would presume it would have answered the follow-up question. The follow-up question here was, what is the importance of family worship to the family? Do we need to have worship in the morning and evening? Can't it be at other times? And I believe that you have elaborated on that already.
Yes.
Before I move on further, any further questions from the brethren?
Brother Colton?
Yes, brother Max.
Yeah, I was thinking when Pastor was speaking how sometimes we have to juggle time to do other things and so forth. If we travel, we have a mobile phone. We can worship while we're traveling, whether it's in the car or on the transportation. Can do it silently or orally if it's possible. If it's just the family in the car, you can do the worship right there. You have the mobile phones with the apps, with the quarterlies, with the Bible, with the hymn. You can sing, you can pray, you can read the quarterly right there. It doesn't have to be long. So it can be done. They can read and say a short prayer, a silent prayer, whatever. So it's what they see as worship or where they think they have to worship.
Yes, brother Max, that very, very important point. With the technology that we have, we should definitely utilize the technology that we have. Because as you said, there are times when you don't really have a physical Bible in your hand, but you have your phone and you have the apps and what have you. So it's a very important point, and thank you for that. Any further questions from the brethren? Feel free to ask. I know that there are a lot of pressing things on our minds. Yes, we have our raised hand, brother Mario.
So to you, so to you. Just a follow up though, if I may, I'm sorry, Chair. Based on the answer that was given, I'm just no. I'm not sure if it's in the morning that the person was referring to.
So Brother Max, I think Brother Max, Elder Thompson, Brother Max was really giving on an alternative to having it in the home if you are juggling to get to work, especially in a metropolis like London. You could do it in the car. You have a 20-minute drive, a 30-minute drive. You do it, the song service, the scripture, you use the app to achieve family worship in the home. So that's what Brother Max was saying, but he didn't specify a time.
Yes, Pastor. What I was trying to say, the person asks about if they can't do it. So I'm saying, as you pointed out, it doesn't have to be morning or evening, so long as it's done. So if the person finds that it's difficult to do it before school, they could do it on the way to school or work. If they find they can't do it when they're going, they may be able to do it when they're coming home. They have a bit more time, maybe slightly more relaxed. So it's just a matter of where, when, how.
Okay, thank you, Brother Max. Elder Francis, that there was by the way, Elder Thompson is a religion student at Northern Caribbean University, soon to graduate, and also a passionate family man. And we want to welcome him here today.
Yes, welcome, Brother Thompson. Yes.
Can you repeat the question that was given before? Okay, the reason why we have worship. Yes, please repeat the reason why we have worship. Excellent, I'm getting it here now. So worship is when we move to the Mesopotamian world, the Greco-Roman world, the Fertile Crescent. We're going to Old Testament theology. Many of the gods are known by El. We say Elohim, we say El, Elohim, but many of the other gods in Mesopotamia, they are known by El, the prefix El, God, they're gods. So they are many gods that were worshipped. And we know in the Old Testament, God was very much brutal with the children of Israel for false worship. Now, in each religion, there is worship to the God. And in each religion, there is a sense that when we worship to the God, we get closer to him, one, and there is communion with the God. And there is also a sense that the God is all powerful and almighty. And then he bestows favors and gifts on us. Within all religion, there is that sense when we worship. As it relates to family worship, the reason why we do it is one, because there is sort of a premise within the Old Testament, wherever Abraham goes, he has an altar. And that is a very, very, very frequent practice within Old Testament motifs. There's always an altar being set up. And there's an idea that Abraham is ordering his children and his family after the similitude of Christ. Family worship, the reason for family worship, one, is to foster the bonds of love, one, horizontally and vertically. So to foster the bonds of love horizontally and vertically. It is to have commune with our God within the family. Now, this is different from personal. This is different from personal devotions. It is sort of saying, God, we make you the head of our home. We give you first place in our home. We invite your presence in our home. We acknowledge you in our home, because when we acknowledge you and your presence in our home, according to Ellen White, we do things differently. Additionally, it is to have the philosophy of Christ in the home. So we pay homage to Elohim, God. As a result of paying homage to him, we have his philosophies enacted in the home. Husbands, love your wife. Wife loves your husband. Respect your husband. Now, what happens is that the home is where now applied theology takes place. And that is why it is the first church. The home is the first church. So applied theology takes place there, where we are really applying Bible. And that's the first place you apply Bible, in the home. And if the home is the first church, then worship has to be an integral aspect of the first church. So it has to do with philosophy. It has to do with paying homage. It has to do with inviting his presence. It is all encompassing, brothers and sisters. And I'm not going to say that family worship prevents divorce. I'm not going to say that. But there's a correlation between family worship and good family ties. And of course, in statistics, correlation doesn't mean causation. But I will tell you there's a correlation with these two variables, family worship and strong family ties. And as a pastor doing many funerals, I see it. When there was a godly home, you see a difference. It always comes out in the eulogy because it stands out to the children. And although they are sleepy and don't want it, later on they see great value in doing it. And it's a place where you teach children as well, where you mimic and model to them. And from that, they go on to do the same within their family of origin. Within their family, sorry.
I'd like to just add a comment that's in the chat. It says here, children learn so much more when we explain the reason why we do something. Therefore, as a church, in Sabbath school, and in the home, we should repeat the reason why we worship. So when the children leave home, they can take this to university, to school, to their own home, etc.
Excellent, excellent. Then children ask why. And when you give them the why, they are better satisfied.
Yes. Next question is, So what if we don't have family worship, but we have good family life? There are others who do morning and evening worship, but the family life isn't that good.
Yes, and that's a very, very important question. If family worship is done well, now if there are people who do family worship legalistically, I've heard of stories where the husband, he wakes them up at 4 and 3:30 in the a.m. and for Sabbath they only eat warmed food. The food was prepared on Thursday or something like that, and they grow to detest family worship. They saw family worship as really a violation of their will, and they grow. And of course, this would have been impacting the relationship as well. I want to say here, there are atheists, people who don't believe in God, who have better family life than us as Christians. Yes, that's off the bat. You see it all the time. But having family worship is not only to engender good family relations. It is to have this connect. And we talk about the purpose here. So there are atheists and non-believers and non-Christians who have good family life, but they have no worship. Because worship doesn't have anything to do with them. That's not their mindset. But let it become your mindset, and you are not having it, it's going to bother you. That is one. And two, it is very possible that you have family worship and you don't have good family relations. I have seen it all the time. I've seen it many times. But family worship must not be done where it is something that is beaten on your head. It must not be regimental. It must not be regimental. And I can guarantee you, if it is done the right way, you're going to have much benefits from it. If family worship is done the right way, it's going to impact your relationship. And yes, there are legalistic people who have family worship and they don't have good family worship, and that is there. But when it is done well, oh wow, it leaves a good taste in the mouth of the children and in the mouth of spouse, husband, and wife as well. You are muted, Elder.
Right. A comment in the chat. We could try relating worship time to meal time. As we feed our bodies physically, so we need to feed ourselves with the spiritual food. So important.
That's another comment.
Yes. We have a raised hand. Sister Kudam, you can go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Just a question in terms of how you balance the family time and individual time with God. And I ask that because I know a couple who used to pray together, obviously, but then they would at least once a year spend time in a retreat on their own to speak to God on a personal level. So it'd be good to get your thoughts on that, like the importance of both and how you manage that.
The family worship has its purpose. It is more in a setting of corporate. It's a lower form of corporate worship, family worship. And but personal devotion is very much important to you as well. So let us talk about the management of personal worship. And I know there are people who wake up early and they do their personal devotions and then they have family devotions. The idea that the spouse goes on a retreat by themselves to speak to God and commune with God, this is also great. In silence, we hear more from God. And that is why fasting is emphasized, because it There is no food to worry about, and that way you hear more from God. And for persons with busy lives, having personal worship and family worship becomes a task. But you can even be more flexible with your own personal time. You can be more flexible with personal worship or individual worship than family worship. For example, in the 4 hours of worship 4 hours that Martin Luther spent with God from 4 o'clock to 7 a.m. or from 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning. Let's take Ellen White. Ellen White had a habit of spending chunks of time with God, yet not neglecting family worship. But in her personal worship, that's where she got all her inspiration, her ideas for writing. And she said her body got so used to it that she could not do without it. And that is why this is something that we need to practice. And as I said, if this is important to you, if you make it a priority, then it's going to work. So if you make that a priority, then something else has to be cut out from your life. Perhaps you need to listen to less social media, or perhaps you need to deactivate your Facebook account or your Twitter or your Instagram. It's perhaps taking too much time from you. But we have to when we make sacrifices for God, where worship is concerned, we always get the benefits. So one, make it a priority, and then you're naturally going to find time for it and be very flexible with it. I love the idea of a retreat. I love the idea of a day fast every 2 weeks and so on. But we can be very, very flexible. And while I am on that, let me just say that intimacy with God is a depression. It helps with depression. Intimacy with God helps with depression. There's a new research that is coming out. I think Jordan Peterson, a former Harvard professor of psychology, he stated in his practice, he realized that only religious transformation cures alcohol addiction. He goes on to say that there's a type of healing that comes through worship with God for depression that they do not understand as yet. It is still being observed. But intimacy with God and spending quiet time with God, it really has an impact on anxiety. It has an impact on negative repetitive thought disorders. It has an impact on depression, a state of sadness. And when you spend time with God, it lessens your worry. And this is something that we may be missing out on, the therapeutic benefits of personal devotions. And my model is 1 hour listen to songs. And try it one day, brothers and sisters. Try it one day. Spend forward. Wake up at 3 a.m. One day you listen to the hymnal, the songs, the soft music, 1 hour. And then the next hour you are in the scripture. And the next hour you are just listening. You are just quiet with God. And the next hour you are just talking to him or fellowshipping with him. It may be hard the first time, but when you practice it over and over, it becomes sweet and you don't want to leave the presence of God. And that is why we have to get back to the times where in our lives, we delete some things. And especially social media, the research is showing that social media is doing us more harm than good, more harm to our spiritual lives than good. Yes, you have it on your phone, but social media is doing great harm to our families and our spirituality.
Thanks.
Yes.
A comment in the chat room. Family worship should be a day-by-day, morning and evening affair. It keeps families together and help us all to be closer with God.
Yeah, let's not make it too legalistic, because there are some people who really cannot have it in the morning and evening, but they may have it in the morning or they can have it in the evening. So let's just say it must be done in the morning and it must be done in the evening. It is by tradition. that we do that. There might be a setting where you do it 10 a.m. There might be a point in your life where you can do it. So it is best to have it in the morning and the evening. But let us not have it as a hard and fast rule. No. Let's not have it as a hard and fast rule. But it is best to have it in the morning. But there are some circumstances where it is, we can only do it once per day, and that is also good. That is okay. But the idea when it doesn't happen, that's where the problem is. We must separate tradition from commandment in our Christian experience. It is by tradition that we burn the morning altar, the evening sacrifice, and so on. And we get that from the temple service. But it's a tradition, it's a culture, and it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But let's not become legalistic with it.
Yes. Back to the questions. How do we make family spirituality more interesting?
Okay, so we want to do it, be versatile with it. So do it outdoors. Try doing it outdoors. The parables of the stone, try getting some stones. Perhaps you in the British Island, perhaps be difficult to get those things, but I'm sure you can get them. Especially when children are concerned, try memory making. So it is fun. So there are many ways, just as the manual says that we must get very creative with our Wednesday night prayer meeting. One, you can utilize the outdoors. Two, whenever we learn things, learn new things, there's a light bulb moment into our mind. When the worship is where we learn things and the children learn, it becomes naturally exciting. And they become passionate about scripture. And even with our son, many of the things he would have learned is by that medium. Take an afternoon to go in the outdoors to just have worship. Let us deal more with the man who built his house on solid ground, that text. Let us look at a YouTube video about the 7 churches. It's a documentary about the 7 churches. Let us look at it. Let us format the worship session very, very plain, and a testimony, a song, and sometimes it could just be singing of songs. Many times we gather, we just sing 3, 4, 5 songs, and that's it. And it is so meaningful. So sit down with your family and decide for a plan of making it more exciting. My excitement may not be yours, but sit down, especially where children are concerned. Ask them the inputs, and then make it exciting. I guarantee you will not regret it. But the idea is to make it priority.
Yes. Where worship is concerned, what advice do you have for a single person?
Oh, yes. So in a single person, you're not yet within a marital diet, meaning you have taken on a husband or a wife. That's where you have more time for that. Believe me, you have more time for that. You have more time for that. And begin in your singleness to spend large amounts of time with God. You're going to have a problem after marriage and family life. When I was single, I partnered with an Adventist family, and we would have Sabbath worship at their home. It was very encouraging for me. As a single man, I tapped in with other families, and I've worshiped with them in the church. And as a single person, sometimes we would have our own worship setting. I know Britain has a singles club, and they have their own worship setting as well. Their Vesper setting that is very much unique to singles, where they discuss singleness and godliness and singleness and so on. So the sky is the limit. I believe each church needs a singles club, a singles president that falls under the Family Life Ministries leader and reports to the Family Life Ministries leader. And I've said that already. And there we can drive singles ministry in a very, I know Croydon would have had it. I know Croydon, you're a competent church, you're a muscle church, you have it. But if you're a single person, you want to engage, you want to develop your appetite for worship, get creative, do new things. You may want to travel to Israel. You have the money to see the Wailing Wall and do something. You want to go to Turkey, to go to the place of Corinth, where Corinth was in Turkey, modern day Turkey. Do these things. It really has a lasting impact on your mind. And if you are single, your prayer life wants to be rich. You want to have a rich prayer life, because to remain sexually pure in this perverse generation is very difficult these days. And many of our young persons are down the road of having premarital sex. And that is a tragedy, and that's a problem. But you want to ensure that your mind is pure. You want to ensure that you're reading the right books. You want to ensure that your time is well catered for. You have a balanced approach to life, your personal worship. And I can guarantee you, you will be single and satisfied. And when you incorporate God in assisting you to manage your sexual emotions or your sexual feelings, he does that for you. If you're a single person here, form a covenant with God and say, Lord, I want to maintain my sexual integrity. I don't want to dishonor you. Help me with these feelings that you have given me. It's in your devotional life as well. Help me to be sexually pure. Help me to reserve myself for that spouse. Help me to have high standard of integrity where sex is concerned. When that occurs, you realize that you are single, yet you are satisfied. You're not looking for somebody to just come and get you off your misery, but you are satisfied in the Lord.
Yes, thank you for that, Pastor. I'm going to share a comment in the chat, and there's also a question in the chat as well. Now, one of the brethren has pointed us to Deuteronomy 6, verse 7, and I'll just read that in your hearing. Deuteronomy 6, verse 7, and it says, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. So as you mentioned earlier, to be versatile in how we conduct our worship. And that text really points us to when we walketh, when we're on the road, when we're out in nature, when we're lying down, just speak it to our children, divulge in it and all of that, and dissect the words of God through those settings. So it's a very important text for us to really draw on if we need help to diversify our worship exercise.
Amen. Amen.
The question as well, it says, can church leadership cause spiritual fatigue? How will this affect the family setting and worship?
Oh boy, that's a tight question. And because I have my own opinions on that, I will share half with you and I will keep half for myself. But we all know in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we are a church of meetings. We meet to meet. We meet to just talk. We are a meeting and program-oriented church. And that's what characterizes an empowered church in many regards, a church that has many good programs and good speakers and so on. But we must also realize that to monopolize people's time, to a severe extent is a form of spiritual abuse. To monopolize people's time to a severe extent is a form of spiritual abuse. And the reason why so many people are burdened in church, because we are not one another's keeper. 20% of the church is doing 80% of the work. So Brother Carlton has family life committee meeting, he has board meeting, he has elders council meeting, he has deacon meeting, and so on. It is multiplied. So whereas he would have been spending time with Sister Richards, he has to be at a meeting. But if somebody else could have taken that role, he is more free. And when the labor is shared across the board, we are all being each other's keeper. There are many people with talents in the church who just don't want to do anything. And when that happens, it falls on the faithful few, and it messes up the time that they can spend with their families. Look at any cult, Jim Jones, Branch Davidians, David Koresh, an offshoot group. They monopolize people's time to a severe extent that they don't have time to do things for themselves or their families. We are not there. As the Adventist Church, we love meeting and we love programs. We are not to that severe extent. We are not there. Nobody can say we are there. But as opposed to the Baptists, you just meet for youth meeting and you meet on Sunday and so on. It is much more. And I was very surprised coming from the Baptist Church and coming into the Adventist Church. I said, wow, these people have a lot to do. They have a lot of meetings. But it kept me occupied as well. It kept me away from trouble. But be one another's keeper. The leadership of the church has to find people to do those ministries. And when it falls on your faithful few, and they already have many, and you have the competence and the gifts, and you don't decide to do it, you are not being your brother's keeper, because you are now overburdening Brother Richards, Sister Richards, and so on. And we must all take that into consideration as we move forward in our Christian lives. And I have something: you mustn't have too many offices. And that is something that I am very much serious about. You mustn't have too many offices. And if it's a small church, Croydon is a very large church, but you have small churches in the country. There are some departments that you do not need. They can be merged in Sabbath school. They can fall under a department, but that is not for you. That is perhaps for my context. So that is how I would answer this question. We are to be each other's our brother's keeper. And as a rule of thumb, have your family enrichment plan that you stick to. We have a meeting today. Oh no, that's Jeff and I, or Louvain and I, or Faye and I, we have an appointment. And I do that sometimes. But we have to make it our priority. Our family enrichment plan, our family spirituality plan, they must become priority. And I don't want you to get my statement wrong. A church to monopolize people's time to a severe degree is a form of spiritual abuse. We are not there yet. But your time must not be monopolized, running through meeting and so on. There needs to be time for balance. And we are people of balance as a church, but balance is the hardest pursuit of life. But we must aim for balance, the 8 laws of health and so on. We must aim for it.
Yes.
I think that's it. Brother
Yes.
Richard, I have moved now.
Yes. So if there's no further questions from the brethren, I must say thank you, Pastor Shillingford, for this session and for the entire week.